So 500 years ago, a man wrote a book, and actually the name of the book is a pun, a play on words, a 500-year-old pun, probably not as good as ours today. But a guy by the name of Thomas More wrote a book. It was kind of a political satire, among other things, and the name of the book is based on several Greek words. This sounds exciting straight off, I know. But in English, the name of the two Greek words together kind of sound like the Greek words that mean a good place. However, in reality, he took two Greek words that very similarly mean no place. And so the name of the fictional nation is Utopia. We use that all the time. Utopia can kind of mean no place or good place. Is sort of kind of a play on words. And of course, his irony was that in trying to create a perfect place, we really end up failing, and there's no place that ends up in the world trying to be what we want and what we idealize as this perfect place to live. My name is Andrew Green. This is the Idea Collision. We throw a lot of things together here and try to come out with something useful for us, but something spiritual as well. And so even things like classic literature can be a launching point. We'll get into some history and all sorts of different things that help us try to relate to our world, past, present, and future. And so kind of going back to this book, the Utopia, it was written in 1515, which is significant because it's just after the discovery of the new worlds. Various people have gone across and found, these various new worlds, and so everybody's excited about what's going to be with this, and is this new place that we can escape to, because everything over here stinks, and that's what everyone was envisioning. And basically Thomas More's point is you're going to go over there and you're going to find that it doesn't exist there either. And that's kind of the whole point of the thing. And so he goes through this fictional island nation. Of course, they thought the United States was a lot smaller. He goes through this mythical island nation that sets up everything perfect, and it turns out that it doesn't work. He explores, by the way, ideas of communalism, or what we call communism, long before Karl Marx wrote his book. We talked about him previously. He goes through ideas of religious toleration and what that would look like, and would that be perfect. I used to be an avid sports fan, and slowly I began losing interest in the around the mid 2000s, like the first decade of this century. And there were things that led to ultimately me dropping sports altogether, and I couldn't tell you who the last World Series winner was, and that used to be my favorite sport of all to watch. And I only football is a little bit more popular, so you can't escape that, and Super Bowls. But there have been years where I didn't know who the Super Bowl winner was for about 6 months if I wasn't listening to the radio. Why did I? Well, what caused me to finally jump over the end is not what really started that decline. What started the decline is more significant, and that is that over the last couple of decades, we've seen our sports, whatever leaders or whoever decides rules and procedures and all these things, they've tried to create utopias in their sport. And what I mean by that is that they've tried to prevent any negative outcomes. That's the idea of a utopia, is nothing bad ever happens. And, if you think of like baseball, baseball was kind of the first one I really dropped, maybe that or basketball. But I think the last time I ever watched a a baseball game or listen to a baseball game, whatever, was in 2009. It would be listening to it because I was in Ukraine at the time. And it was like 2009, probably the last time I ever, somewhere right around there. And it happened to be that the year before was the first year they instituted instant replay in baseball. Now, I'm not a big fan of instant replay anywhere, but in baseball it's horrible. And it's only gotten worse since then. And the more they try to make everything, it's all to try to prevent any wrong call, any negative thing from any human error has to be removed from sports. And so, in football, a similar thing has happened where, everything, basically every time something happens, it's not perfect, it's a flag. I saw a promotion. It was someone played this old promotion of a NFL, and this was what they led with. This was what they attracted you to the NFL with, and they're like, every hit in this, in this promotion would be illegal and would be flagged today. And this is what they tried to attract people to watch it. But today they wouldn't have any of it in there. And that's what it's become unbearable to watch, because you're kind of on pins and needles waiting. You got a successful play and then, oh, okay, well, there's a flag. It's become unbearable. I can't even watch it anymore. It's not fun. I'd just rather watch flag football. It's horrible. And so they're trying to get rid of human error, trying to make it a perfect world. Now, I thought these innovations were going to be great when they positively impacted my team. If I thought of things that, I would have liked to replay for that home run or for this thing or whatever. But really, once I got what I wanted, I really didn't like it. Overall, it made the product worse. Last week, we started talking about the phrase, make America great again. And there are strong feelings on both sides of this topic. You really love that phrase or you really hate that phrase. There's no one that goes, I'm kind of out on it. Let me just kind of put that on like people. There's no one hardly that's just kind of has no opinion on this phrase whatsoever. So we started talking about it, trying to define it and look at it differently, not necessarily from a political standpoint, even though it's an extremely political phrase, but trying to look at what it means and look at some of the things behind it to draw a different lesson than just politics. So, one of the things that comes up, and last week we started defining what greatness is, first of all. But another point comes as we analyze this phrase. Someone made a valid point. It's like, okay, if we're going to say we're making it great again, we have to say that it was great at one point in time. So when was it great? And the people who have seized upon this are ethnic minorities. So say, like, okay, so when was America great for black people? Just offhand. Was it great when we had slavery? Or was it great when we had, was it great for black people because they are a part of this country? Are they a part of America? If it was great, was it great for them during segregation? Was it great for them? It go through the different periods of time. Was it great when they couldn't vote? When was this great for black people? Because if it wasn't great for all of the people in the country, then it's not great. And hidden in these objections, and this is not to say that those objections aren't valid, but there's something that underlies that question, and it's a utopian premise. Since it's not perfect for all people, it's not great, or it's not even good. And that's the kind of the problem. Michelle Obama in 2009 made this quote, and it's the same utopian principle. She said, for the first time in my adult life, I am finally proud of my country, something to that effect. Right? So in her adult life, she couldn't look back at any point in time in history and say, you know what, I'm proud that our country did that. In her adult life, she couldn't be proud of anything. It took people electing her husband for her to be proud of the accomplishments that America had made. And it's this utopian premise again. Until it's perfect in a way that affects me personally, then it's not perfect. So therefore it's not good, it's not great, it's nothing. Perfect or nothing. Now, I don't want to excuse decades and centuries of mistreatment of people. That's obviously not what the goal here is. But it's not ideal because it was harder for a subgroup of our America, then they say, well, it was not great at all. You know, if we go back in time, we can find points in which it was great, even for people who are suffering in some way. It's still great because even in our country, there were times where even during these periods of, less than ideal treatment, we have, hundreds and hundreds of black colleges being made. And now we're starting to lose some of those. They're starting to close down as we're integrated, which is interesting because one of the things I've been reading in some articles is that there's this sadness about the historically black universities and colleges closing down. And it's this sentimental thing like, oh, it's sad to see it go. It's like, wait a minute, we're sad to see it go because we're being segregated. Why are we sad to see this go? Because at that point in time, we called it worse because they had to go to these black colleges because they weren't allowed in the white colleges, and that was bad. Now that they're allowed into the white colleges, these black colleges, exclusive black colleges, are closing down, and now that's bad. It's like, wait a minute, this is a sign of progress. So there's this nostalgia for the old things, the old Negro leagues, right? Well, those are gone. Why are those gone? Because we're allowed in, right? The Cleveland Indians got their name. I know the whatever they are now. The Cleveland Indians got their name because they were the first ones to allow Native Americans to play. They had 3 Indians. I think they were called the Cleveland Spiders. I saw this like in a stand-up comedy routine. It wasn't really that funny of a routine, but it was just true. But they were called the Cleveland Spiders or something like this. And they had like 3 Indians on their team. And someone said, we should call ourselves the Cleveland Indians because we have the first 3 and nobody else has any. So they changed their name. It was great. It was a sign of something positive. There was a time where black people had an extremely high marital fidelity rate, higher than white people, by the way, where there was significantly lower crime. And like even today, like they've always been more religious. Like there's a higher percentage of black people that go to church regularly than white people. That's great. But we can look and say it's not perfect because there's still negative treatment of them in certain scenarios or situations or what have you. So since it's not perfect, it's not great. But our country was great, even in times of not ideal treatment, because our country was structured to allow improvement, number one. It was structured so that we could try to change our Constitution, right? Very few, national constitutions or whatever you want to call them, documents, have this built-in ability to move and change. Even if people violated that Constitution in principle, it was still structured to be able to change. And to move and to progress. And even under the lack of ideal situations, there were still mechanics for people to achieve something greater. The same is not true, say, in India. Right? where there is a hard caste system and you don't leave it, period, and your kids don't leave it, and their kids don't leave it. You're the untouchables. So these limits have long been erased, contrary to what people assert. I'm not saying it's ideal, but largely these things have been erased. You can look around society and see ethnic minorities at every position, every level of success. We have millionaires and billionaires of different ethnic backgrounds, right? We're not a utopia, but success is achievable by any metric. And I know we just talked about how financial metrics are not the only metric of greatness, but whatever you want to judge by, we can achieve greatness. We can achieve success no matter who you are in this country. And so it has been great. Utopianism still affects our country. All utopianism is trying to prevent harm, trying to prevent any negative thing from happening, always trying to make things perfect. And so we push that razor's edge to try to get rid of more and more and more harm. And what ends up happening is we get to a point where we create more and more harm. There are more laws aimed at preventing something negative from happening, right? And now we get to a point where those laws take life and make it more unbearable. It removes rights from people because we're trying to prevent. If we want to prevent all bad things from happening, we really have to prevent all things from happening. At what cost do we prevent harm? We get this removal of liberty. Europe now is going through this so much at a progressive rate. We can't even imagine what it's like. If you want to see videos, you can find them. People being arrested for praying silently in their own homes. People being arrested for offensive Facebook posts. Like somebody reported that you said something on Facebook and they didn't like it. We're arresting you now, and then we're confiscating your phones and your devices. Don't think that there aren't people that don't want to hear. Right? Now, that's on the left side of the political spectrum. But this utopianism occurs on the right side of the aisle as well. Typically, you'll find it with one-issue voters. And the most common one of those is pro-life. I'm pro-life myself. As I've said, there's a thing called the Freedom Caucus. And it jumped to popularity out of something called the Tea Party, which has lost a little steam recently. But the Freedom Caucus has lost representation. But they're all about like one or two issues that, and pretty much this group is known for being against stuff. Well, we're not going to do this. They don't really create a lot of progress. You can't trace a lot of progress to their movement. They're pretty much holding up any progress. And I agree with some of the things they stand for. But before they've kind of faded from view, they didn't really accomplish much. You can't really go down the list of things they pushed through and got done. Because if it's not ideal, then they're not going to vote for it. If a law isn't worded exactly the way they like it, if it doesn't have everything in it that they want, then they think it's somehow it's a compromise, and it's not ideal, so therefore it's not what we should do. So all they've done is kind of prevent any legislation, and that allows the people that they most are opposed to get done what they want to get done. It's not perfect enough. One of the most famous utopianists on the conservative side is a guy by the name of Ron Paul. If you don't know who Ron Paul, his son Rand Paul is now in Congress. Ron Paul, just think of him as the Republican Bernie Sanders. He once criticized Ronald Reagan in the 80s for basically not being conservative enough. Yeah, Ronald Reagan wasn't conservative enough for Ron Paul. That's what I'm talking about. And so there's really only two results for utopianism, bad and worse. Bad being you accomplish nothing. Worse being in accomplishing nothing, you actually do accomplish something, that is the destruction of human liberty and freedom and ability to decide and pursue your own course of happiness, which is constitutional. And this happens in the church, even though there's good intentions, and there's good intentions politically and there's good intentions religiously. This happens in the church as well. You can do this wherever you're at. You can just think about a church that you are a part of or have been a part of and think of the rules that exist there, the things that you are supposed to do. Usually it's things you're not supposed to do, but there's things that you're expected to do. And a lot of these will either be not mentioned in the Bible, or they will be slightly mentioned in the Bible, and a lot of liberties are taken into interpreting them into a human thing, a human rule, a human law. These are the things that if you do them, you'll go to hell. These are the things if you don't do them, you'll go to hell. Whatever however it's phrased. These are the things that if you do them, God will like you more. And we're typically trying to create a utopian world in the church. Let me give you an example. I know this example, and all the people are no longer in the story. Some are passed away. The church that I'm speaking of no longer exists. So a church out in New England that I was associated with at some point before I was there, I heard a story about a girl. This had been like in the 70s or maybe 80s. She became a Christian. And she was really excited. You know, a young, I assume like early 20s was kind of how, you know, I pictured from the description. Anyway, she became a Christian. And then she was like jumped into teaching Sunday schools. And an elderly or aging, maybe not elderly at that point, preacher's wife jumped all over her because she had a necklace. And one of the preachers who's still there from this, he said, Andrew, you could have barely seen the necklace. It was so small. It was like a thread. But back then in New England, there was this idea: makeup, jewelry, outward adornment is set straight. It's the straight to hell department. And she jumped all over her for it. She's a new Christian. Like, even if it would have been like something that was wrong, like, is that like the first place we have to go? She's barely in, to a church. We have to. And the manner in which she did. But there's this utopian world. We have to prevent any harm from happening, any wrong, anything. Like, we have to create a utopia. The church is not a utopia. It doesn't exist. Utopia doesn't exist. And so obviously the net result is predictable. She left the church immediately, never came back. Because she violated somebody's idea of utopia. And is there a verse that kind of talks about outward adornment? Yes. Is it taken out of context? Way. And this is not the podcast for that. But the point is that we do more damage than good when we try to prevent progress because it's not utopia. Someone trying to make America great again. Well, it was never great. It was never, because it was never perfect, and we have to go to the mat for that. Someone's trying to improve something. Someone's trying to make it better. Is it perfect? No. Was it ever perfect? No. Is it going to be perfect? No. Can we improve it? Yeah. Should we try? Should we try to be more good with people's money, yeah, we probably should do. That's probably a good thing to do. And so perfection exists nowhere. And the perfect church exists nowhere either. Someone said this. He said, if you find the perfect church, don't join it because you'll ruin it. Right? If you manage to come across Utopia, you would actually be the ruining factor because you're human. Somehow you would find a thing that didn't have humans in it. You better not join it. Because where humanity is, there is imperfection. It's always going to be that way. You cannot create a utopia, not in your country, not in a church, not in an organization that you're a part of. So the best thing you can do is try to make it great or great again. I'm Andrew Green. This is the Idea Collision, and I hope you join me next time.